Welcome to the messy middle of entrepreneurship, unfiltered and unapologetic. Uncensored Entrepreneurs, hosted by Star Codd, Robert Wall, and Tina Torres-Wilson, brings you real stories from the trenches of building a business. Those late nights, hard lessons, big wins, and everything in between. This is where the truth about entrepreneurship lives. No fluff, no filters, just raw, honest conversations with founders who have lived it. So, if you're over the highlight reel and you're ready for the real deal, hit play. Most founders say that they want to make a difference, but few are willing to question the systems they're building their success on. Today's guest, Lorraine Smith, has worked at a senior level across industries for more than 2 decades. Banking, mining, food, media, agriculture, you name it. She's walked through factories and boardrooms and sat at the tables where corporate sustainability gets planned. And she's here to tell you most of it is not working. In 2021, Lorraine stepped away from the world of CSR and impact consulting to focus on what she calls industrial healing, a deeper transformation of how we work, why we work, and who benefits from those outcomes. She now runs Practice Change, help mission-driven leaders to get honest about their impact and to build companies that actually serve life. Lorraine, welcome to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, absolutely. We're so excited to have you on today. This is our last recording for 2025.
This is your last one for 2025.
Yeah, saving the best for last.
A special day today because it's one of our co-hosts' birthday today. Thank you so much for being a part of our team, and we just love you.
Confetti, fireworks, all the special effects.
Thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you guys this year. Another amazing year with Uncensored Entrepreneurs.
Year number 3?
Rolling into season 3. Absolutely. So, Lorraine, with that being said, thank you so much for joining us on such an exciting time. This is an exciting episode for all of us. More than anything, we're really excited to find out more about you and to be able to share your mission and some of your impact with the rest of our audience as well. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being here, and happy birthday, Star. What an honor to join you on your special day. That's really fun.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. We're so excited to have you here. So I know, Lorraine, you have tons of experience with working with big, massive industries, and we want to know a little bit about the work that you've done with those industries and what made you walk away, and tell us a little bit about your journey there.
Yeah, sure. First, I just want to express gratitude for the experiences I've had. There's a lot of critiquing of big business from many angles, certainly in the sustainability and ethical business, what gets called ESG, or environmental, social, and governance spaces. There's a lot of concern being expressed in lots of different channels. And I relate in some ways, I can appreciate, but I am not here to throw anybody under the bus or to take down the man. I do not have an activist stance per se. Having said that, I've made some unusual opinions known, so maybe I'll just give a bit of context there. For about 20 years, I worked as a corporate sustainability consultant, which is like a management consultant, mainstream business, but our strategic focus is on social, environmental, and governance impacts. So what that meant is I worked with companies, some household names. I'm cautious about saying too much about actual companies. I can jump in there, but let's just say most of your listeners would recognize a good dozen or so of the banking, food, pharma, media companies, and then lots of B2B companies as well, deeper in the supply chain. And my role with those companies was as a paid consultant. So from an outside role, either with a boutique firm, I worked for a couple different boutique firms, or as an independent, to help their headquarters, so strategic management level, make decisions around how and if they'll address climate change within their business, how they'll ensure they have a positive impact on people, on our collective health, and how their products and services can really be part of a world we want to live in. And there's a whole cottage industry built up around sustainability, and a new one came on its heels around ESG. And I was really fortunate to do a lot of great work in that space. Ever more senior, I worked with CEOs and sometimes chairs of the board giving them guidance on how they can have greater positive impact. So that was my job. I actually want to explain a little bit more tactically what that means, because I'm wondering if maybe some of your listeners might not have bumped into sustainability as an actual practice. So there's three main activities that a corporate sustainability consultant like I was would do. And the first is set strategy. So that's looking at goals and getting clear on what are the milestones, how will we know we've reached that goal? And that's pretty straight up strategy. I think most would be familiar with a lot of that. The lens is on positive impact, but it's strategic planning pretty straight up. The second area gets quite interesting, and this is called stakeholder engagement. It's a really big part of sustainability and ESG. And what's supposed to happen there, so there's a little foreshadowing of what happens next, is we talk to important people in relation to the business, maybe internal, so executive engagement, maybe team leads or operational leads, and we do some listening, talking to them about a particular issue. We might be going outside, so we might be talking to academics or journalists or even activists. I'm not an activist, but I had the good pleasure of talking to some pretty angry and frustrated people with business, and then other people with a point of view. And we're interviewing and listening, or maybe bringing them together into groups. It's like focus grouping, but with a really social and environmental lens, maybe a particular issue, maybe broader. The third activity has really grown, and it's become its own separate cottage industry within the cottage industry, which is what's referred to as reporting. It's a form of communications in corporate land where you'll see companies will have annual reports, right? They have to report their financial numbers. And that's been around for a long, long time, decades. But more and more companies are required to report what are called non-financial disclosures. There's a whole universe of things I could say about that. But the bottom line is there is a lot of pressure on companies, and there's a lot of moving parts to sustainability and ESG reporting. And that became a deeper and deeper area of expertise for me. Investors are looking for that data. People are trying to understand how to interpret it, make sense of it, and use it at least to run a good business, if not to do good. So those are the three areas I spent a lot of time getting pretty good at, getting paid well to do, and having a lot of credibility to get called in as a lead consultant or a speaker in some cases. I'll pause there because then things changed a lot in October, actually, 2021. So let's just take a little breath and see if any questions are emerging.
Well, first, I'll just say that that's fascinating. Coming from corporate America, I came from manufacturing before I ever even got into this space. But in that big corporate world, I love that you're talking about this industrial healing. I've actually never heard that concept quite that way. In those cases, even for myself, coming from an industrial quality background, it's all about metrics, right? It's all about the data as you talked about it. And so actually having someone from outside of traditional sustainability that can communicate and articulate what's really happening on the ground with the people, even the activists and those just in that space, and then how that connects with the metrics, and then relaying that back to management or senior management. I think that's fascinating because in most cases, corporations running purely by metric alone, and they're missing so much. There's typically a gap in their industry, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that, when they only use metrics.
I think you're talking her language now, Robert.
I know. I love it because I immediately was like, oh, I get it.
Well, I'm glad you get it, and prepare for me to give everybody's that head exploding emoji, because in many ways, what you've just said, Robert, is exactly right. That was my job and many others, lots of other consultants doing work like this. And metrics do matter, of course, but also the human story, the lived impacts, et cetera. And so some things are harder to box up. But what I realized was, in spite of really amazing teams and a lot of resources, to put it in context, a sustainability report, it varies, of course, varies widely by company and team and a bunch of details. But I saw prices paid, not all to me. Of course, I was often working on a team, but I saw anything from, these will be US dollars, from 40,000 to well over $250,000 spent for one report. So that's not billions, but it's not nothing. They're investing real money in doing this work. And the interview process, I mean, sometimes these were hundreds of thousands of dollars dedicated to listening to people on the ground and really getting clear on the issues. So it sounds like we're going in the right direction, right? Or at least we're getting the right information. The problem, as I saw it, was there was not really much happening as a result.
I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Before we dive back in, I want to share something I've seen again and again. When business feels stuck, it's not always strategy. It's often misalignment. That's what inspired me to create the Universal Brand Alignment Method. It's a course that helps entrepreneurs reconnect with who they truly are and how they're meant to lead so that their message finally lands. So if you're ready for your brand to reflect your truth, then head to brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. That's brandingcollaborative.com/alignment. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
A lot of people getting more clear on what the issues are. But unfortunately, in all my years of doing this work, no matter how senior the executives were that we were talking to, no matter how big the budget, no matter how fancy the suits when we went to give the presentation to the chair of the board, I literally never once saw a strategic decision be genuinely impacted by the work. And I'll take it one step further and say, well, there might have been changes, like information might have been taken into account, most likely to reduce risk versus improve outcome. I never saw the business model be seriously considered. And why that matters is that in many cases, the actual way the company generates value is tied directly to the harmful issues we were taking a look at. I started to perceive a lot of industrial harm. And I was like, well, what would it look like for industry to be a force for healing instead of harming, or best case scenario, harm reduction? I brought those kinds of questions more and more into my work. I left my last day job with a boutique firm in New York City. So I'm Canadian, in case all the things I say rhyming with out haven't already given me away. But for 10 years, I lived in New York City. I worked for a boutique consulting firm there. And when I left the firm, I'm just about to have my 10-year anniversary as an independent. So it was late January 2016. And I thought at the time, well, now that I'm independent, I'm not punching timesheets, I'm not reporting into a management consulting machine, I can make way more courageous decisions, speak more openly to the executives that I'm doing work for and say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking there's bigger questions we could be asking here. And something really strange happened, which was I heard this double feedback. On the one hand, I'd hear folks saying, those are great questions. You're absolutely right. We do need to take a look at this. We'll probably work that into next business cycle. There'd always be some reason. And then a magical thing happened. And this was where the forces, spirit, God, whatever it was, gave me very clear insight, which was I found myself asking the question, what would it look like for this business to truly serve life? Instead of life serving the business, right? Like all these people running around in service of profit, in service of the bottom line. What if we turn that around and said, this business serves life? What would that look like? And I heard, and I literally saw this many times. It took me a few times to click. I heard the person I'm speaking to, and I can think of a few CEOs and one board chair in particular who would say something like, well, we got to be realistic. And then it's almost like those words as they were leaving their mouths, they just hung there. Got to be realistic about business serving life. And it was almost like they saw their own words stop in midair. It doesn't mean they could then magically say, oh yeah, we're going to just totally rewire our business model and decommission all the harmful parts and only grow the regenerative parts. But it did mean that I could see, oh, there's a switch here that's ready to flick. That's when I stopped. I had 7 active clients at the time. It was October 2021. And I essentially said, thank you, but no thank you. And I fired all my clients or wound down the projects where they were. Some are still very good friends. And I've hosted a few of those very dear clients just as friends visiting now. And I only work on what I think of as regenerative work, as work that enables companies to be part of a healing force and really look at ways to transform the current economic norms.
This is so interesting and so fascinating. How do you help people sit with complexity rather than rush toward easy fixes? That easy fix or those branding wins.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Tina. I mean, the short answer is it depends. I'll be very candid. I love this podcast, by the way, and I love the degree to which you truly are uncensored. I mean, there's so many examples of listening to your colleagues and guests coming on talking about the trenches, right? So I'm sure it won't surprise you when I say I've had to put some really hard thinking and learning and trial and error into my own business model. Because it's fun to sit around saying, yeah, imagine if business was a force for healing. Imagine if the economy only served life. Okay, what do you guys want to do now? It's not that simple. Let's be candid about part of why it's not that simple. A very big part is because most people, myself included, we are raised and educated in ways that teach us to be good at analysis, good at numbers and counting. We're taught that progress and success means, for the most part, of material success. And then maybe we have the good fortune, privilege, or mentoring support to start thinking about spiritual success or physical health and wellness. But rarely are we taught, certainly not at a young, systemic, and holistic age, with exceptions, to think about how all of our lives are interconnected, how industries are interconnected. If anything, we've continued to disaggregate, right? So this pen in my hand, I'd have to be a really good investigative journalist to tell you where anything in it even came from, right? Much less the food we eat and all the things. So we're so disaggregated that even to understand what it is we need to change is already a massive conceptual leap. And then if you make that leap, you're like, yeah, I get it. It's complicated, but we're smart people. We can do exchange rates around the world. We can learn languages. We can do heart surgery. We're very smart people. So I'm ready. I'm in. Then you get to, oh, okay, but most businesses have been designed and running in ways that literally do not serve life. The way they're evaluated, measured, incentivized, monetized, and capitalized are dependent on that current model. And so it's quite a leap to be like, oh, that's okay. We'll just take all that apart and put it back together. So I just set the stage for the challenge a little, but I do love the question. I'm happy to answer it as deeply as I can, but I want to just pause and see what else is arising.
That's perfect. Somewhere along the line, some of the things that you're talking about probably was in some of the earlier forms of community and business. And then we started to build corporations that answered to the shareholders, right? And so because we answer to the shareholders, it's all about the metrics, the numbers, the bottom line. And you see it constantly this time of year in all of the corporate clients that I have served also over the years. I see big layoffs right around October, fiscal year end, where they start to lay people off in that culture just to meet the bottom line, make sure that upper senior management gets all the bonuses. And then you know what's going to happen? The same thing. They're going to bring them all back in right around February, March. And then we see that constantly happening time and time again. The fact that you're bringing up some of these things, it's truly thought leadership. And you're starting to see more and more of that within corporations. It's a deep level. You almost have to peel back the layers from all the levels of management right down to the single person, typically an owner or somebody that wants to make a big shift and take the reins and make this culture change. So kudos to you for even being a change agent with some of these things that we're talking about. But there's so many other businesses that still need this today.
Yes, so true. And I think back to grad school and undergrad, there were no conversations around this at all whatsoever. Even when I worked in corporate 15 years ago, nothing of this was discussed. I was on an executive level in corporate. So now that we're looking at this and there's more talk around this topic, a little bit more, I would say, than 15 years ago, how do you find the businesses who are willing to work with you and also that want to go on a deeper level to make change, even if it means that it's a cost or an expense to the business?
Yeah. So back to that messy entrepreneurial reality, I'll tell you what I thought I was doing and how that didn't work, and then what I'm doing now. And thank you, by the way. I appreciate how this resonates. And one of the things I've learned is this generally does resonate because it's common sense that we should look after one another, right? That we should be healthy and well in an ecologically thriving world. It's pretty hard to argue with that. And then it gets a bit messy when you're like, oh, it's not really business's job, but actually if they're doing the opposite, then it kind of is. So it resonates and then you get to the then what. So at first what I did, this is a little bit inside baseball, and so it's a bit jargony. I'll unpack it. There's something called a materiality assessment, which is, it has been the bread and butter of a lot of sustainability consultancies and management consultants. Things are shifting both because of AI, which helps us do the data analysis a little more quickly, but also because the dialogue on sustainability and ESG is getting really bumpy. It's interesting. Very different in the US than in Canada, than in Europe, than in Brazil, where I have a lot of experience. I'm a Brazilian Portuguese speaker, so the window there, it's different. It's different everywhere. But the point is, a materiality assessment has been a really key piece of sustainability. So what does a materiality assessment do? It takes a look at the whole company and says, what is most material to you? And why? Is it from a risk perspective, an opportunity perspective, a competitiveness perspective? What do we got here? Materiality assessments seek to break down a series of issues. Let's say it's a bank. They'll look at things like community resilience or ethics. Banks have had some issues with ethics lately. So it'll be a series of issues, and then it'll help the company understand, what do you need to do around these issues? That's the purpose of a materiality assessment. I was involved in dozens, either conducting them, doing the executive interviews, or I was sometimes interviewed as a stakeholder. Once I got to know a bunch of sectors quite well, I was sometimes tapped as an expert for those. I noticed that assessment after assessment, and these are high ticket items, again, often running $250,000 to do these assessments to inform the strategic perspective. Never once did it actually have a real impact. And often the most important issues weren't really on the list, or it'd be something like ethics, but we couldn't really get into what's driving messy ethics. So one day I said, you know what I think we need? I think we need to put reality into the materiality assessment. I tweaked the spelling to put reality into it. So in my early days, going totally independent and unhooking from the mainstream sustainability world, what I offered, and it's open source, by the way, I made this open to the commons. Anybody listening can download. It's a free methodology. I took the mainstream ESG methodology and I turned it around so that reality leads, so that life affirming economic activity is the point. And then we look at the company in relation to that. And I thought, I'm going to just bring this back into my corporate community and say, hey guys, remember me? I think we could do something a little differently. And I had a fascinating experience as an entrepreneur. I had overwhelming positive response. There was one post I put on LinkedIn early on that blew up my field, saying, here's what's wrong and here's what I think we could do instead. It was like a full-time job responding to the comments. It was really, really overwhelming. And all but one was very triggered by some of the language. But everybody else was like, thank you for saying it out loud. Finally, we're doing this. But you guys probably know you can't really take LinkedIn comments, even positive ones, to the grocery store. I'm getting really great traction from my community, from my peers, from people who get it, who have been walking in these same shoes. But the businesses are like, yes, so thank you for your feedback, but cricket in terms of engagements. I gave workshops. I was brought in to speak. I got a little bit of traction that paid me, but nothing close to a business model. So I had to go back out into the wide world and also inwardly and ask myself, what am I really here to do? Because there's a pattern, which is once you go deep into these sustainability issues, once you see the social fabric unraveling in some of the downtowns, once you see the loss of habitat. I spent a lot of time in Brazil and frankly, here in Canada, real loss of habitat in the name of progress and all kinds of real concerns and job loss and loneliness and mental health crises. Once you see this, you can't really unsee it. But there's a lot of us who are like, but I'm not giving up. I know there's another way. I know that there's real value, that we need each other, that we need business, we need ingenuity. So I went back in and I did what entrepreneurs are supposed to do, which is go talk to the people we're here to serve and listen and ask, what do you need? How's it going? What have you been doing so far? Well, I thought I was selling materiality. So I thought, I'm like, oh, I'll just take my product out and refine it. I'll just get some good feedback on the length or the format. But what I actually got was exactly what I needed, which is good feedback on materiality. But then these questions would come back to me. Lorraine, you seem like you're having a good time. You're not beaten down. You had to move to a smaller place because you had zero income. My income literally went into free fall. I've been living off not very ample savings. I'm not independently wealthy. I was on the short end of a very expensive divorce. It's part of why I left Manhattan, is that I was the earner in that relationship that wasn't a healthy one. And when I left, I was responsible for 2 households for a little while. It's like, ouch. So I moved back to Canada. I mean, I had to make all kinds of real choices because there was no more $200,000 salary for doing work that I didn't believe in. But I'm me. I was like having a great time. I was really feeling joyful and excited and empowered by the idea of shifting towards an economy that serves life. So as I'm doing these interviews and feedback finding sessions, folks are saying, but by the way, how do you keep going? And I said, well, I have this practice I call practice change that helps me. And they're like, oh, tell me more. And so I'd say a little bit more. And then over time, I realized, oh, there's real appetite for that. So I just started to informally host practice change sessions once a week. Anybody could come. If they couldn't pay, they didn't pay. And it was very unprofitable. just shared my method for how I keep going, how I make change, how I decide what I'm doing, and how I keep making progress on changes. And then I realized it took me about a year of these active customer feedback conversations. Oh, that's where people want help. They know what changes need to be made. They are not giving up. They are not unseeing those changes, but they have constraints. They have family or they have real responsibilities, and it's hard to stay the course. And so I still do the materiality work I've been doing, but more what I do now as my bread and butter as an entrepreneur. And what I'm really loving is helping others know they're not crazy. No, 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 it's not you, it's the system. Know that there are choices. We really can make choices. We really can decide to do things differently. We can speak about some of the things that we see happening. We can innovate and change. And that we can do that in community with accountability and have my Swiss Army knife of tools that I've developed over the years to survive the crazy. And I literally use those tools to stay motivated, to discern among all the noise, and to keep going and really love the journey. So that's how I ended up doing the practice change. And just to be clear, that is mostly individuals. There are a few organizations who've come my way, but I'll tell you when they do, they're quiet. They're like, can we talk to you? But it's just us talking to you, not the company. That's the stage of the corporate work these days.
Yeah, that's so true. And when you talk about practice change, I mean, we all have some element of that we've instilled in our own business. Maybe we call it something different, but it's that alignment. Clearly, just in you talking, I could tell that you were stepping into your full alignment because regardless of the outside noise, the income, and all the shifts that were happening in your personal life, you were still finding joy in doing something that had a purpose that was meaningful to you.
Hold on. Why are you so calm, cool, collective?
What do we say? In a world of chaos, of us are drawn to those that are in a calm state. It's like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? But as you said, they were whispering it to you because they still answered to the bottom line of their corporate environment. I love that. For the sake of time, because man, we could talk. This is, like you said, big topic. A couple things I did want to mention. You mentioned that you have resources out there that people can just download and look at. What's a good place for people to start if they want to look at some of the work that you're doing or read up on that?
Yeah, probably the most active place to find what's coming out, because I'm always releasing new things or just reminding people of what's there, would either be on my Instagram, so be Lorraine Smith, or LinkedIn as well. And I'll make sure that link is visible for you all in the show notes. So I'm very actively sharing things. My website as well, that materiality download is there, and that's belorrainesmith.com. So happy for people to take a look there. And by the way, I really welcome feedback and questions. If it isn't apparent, I'm making this up as I go. I'd love to hear what lands, what doesn't, where others have ideas. I'm sure I'm missing a whole universe of things. So I love hearing what folks would see as additive by all means.
Well, I loved a lot of what you said, B. Lorraine, and I think we're going to have a lot of questions because there were a few things that you mentioned, and we don't have time to get into it today, but just the divorce element of an entrepreneur is a whole topic within itself, and a lot of people are struggling through that. And then you talked about that pivot. We've talked a lot about pivoting this year. A lot of people have had to pivot due to financial issues or just varying issues. Talked about relocating to a different country. Those topics are very interesting for our audience. So I wish we had more time to dive into those things. But I just want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with our audience so that they don't feel alone in some of the struggles that you've been able to overcome. So there's a huge win there that they can see. You were able to turn that around into what I call joy, building a dream life for yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Star. If I can just add one little nugget that might help folks as well. One of the things I've seen is, and I draw on this very actively in my practice change community, which by the way is a side community. It's hard to see on the website. I'll make sure you guys have a link that'll help you out there. Let's say a vulnerable community. So it's a little bit like, let's talk before we go in there versus making it totally public right now. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because there's a range of modalities. So there's a lot of great work going on out there. Coaches helping with everything from life coaching to breath work and yoga and accountability and time management. There's so many really important personal development practices that really help us as individuals. And I've had the great benefit of many coaches over the years, and I draw on all that. And we have some planetary crises unfolding and human scale crises unfolding. And all the individual breath work in the world can only do so much with that. So I also draw on modalities that recognize complexity and large scale crises without owning it all because it's too much, right? There's no one person who can be like, I got deforestation. We are all deforestation, I hate to tell you. So I feel very blessed to have this opportunity to weave together different modalities. Some you could just call straight up coaching and professional development. Some is more like complexity theory and systems theory, so that as individuals, we can hold the big stuff and move through it. So just want to throw that out there. If folks are feeling like, but it's also much as, yeah, it is a lot. That's why we need all the tools we have, and we have them. We have absolutely everything we need.
And we need all the coaches we have out there.
No one person has this, and we all have it.
Which is why collaboration is key. People like ourselves having this conversation with you, Lorraine, it just expands the opportunity for us to work together and try to find real results that impact the lives of those we serve. And so as one last takeaway, and of course, there's probably so many things. If there's someone listening right now, whether it's big corporate or even just someone that has that small business that they've launched with just a few handful of employees, if they're looking to make some of these changes, what's just one powerful question that you could give them as a leader to start to engage their team in the environment that they're in?
Yeah. I would invite them to ask, what is the change you seek? From what to what? And really get as crystal clear as you can. For instance, not, oh, we got to get everyone on the same page, or we have to tackle unaffordable housing. No. Really, what changes from what to what? And get so crisp on what that is that you can see it and feel it and recognize your own role in living into that change.
I love that last little element too. What is their role?
What is changing? And what am I doing about it to make that change true? There's so much magic in that. That would be my number one invitation to anybody listening.
What a beautiful way to close this out, because when I think of it, each and every one of us, we have either read through or we've actually helped create or be a part of multiple handbooks and guides, operational plans. And how often do we say at the very end of that, when we implement something, what is your role now in this strategy, in this practice, and the way that we launch this? I mean, many people are missing that one little element, and that is so key. So I learned a great deal from you today. So thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting, and happy birthday again, Stark.
Oh, thank you so much.
And as we roll out the last recording of the year, again, just happy holidays, Merry Christmas for those that celebrate that, Happy New Year. I have this feeling that 2026 has great impact in store for us if we're willing to step into our purpose. So thank you once again. And for those that are just listening in, notice the notes that we're going to have as we syndicate this across all podcasts and platforms so that you can really reach out and start having these conversations with B. Lorraine Smith. Her website is a good place to start, but it's B. Lorraine, Lorraine Smith, blorrainesmith.com. I know that now that we've had this conversation, I'm going to go out and download some of your stuff and really dive in a little bit deeper and circle back around with you. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Have a good day.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. If you're getting value from the show, take a minute to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you tune in. It helps more bold entrepreneurs find us. Until next time, keep showing up, uncensored and unapologetic. And we'll catch you on the next episode.